All right, so in this video, we're going to finish up chapter 3. I'm not really going to tell you anything you don't already know here, but I do want to point something out and make sure you know how to combine logical operators to check for a numeric range. So let's say that we have a value called x, and let's say x, this variable is set to 25. Maybe we got this from a database, or maybe we got it from the keyboard. It doesn't matter where we receive the number from it, but we want to check to see is 25 between 20 and 40 inclusive. So another way of saying the same thing is maybe we should write x there. Is x greater than or equal to 20? Is x less than or equal to 40? Then x is inside the acceptable range. So our range is really 20 to 40, right? And it's inclusive. So it includes 20 and it includes 40. So how would we write this out in code? Well, it's pretty simple in Python. We can just say if x is greater than or equal to 20 and x is less than or equal to 40, then we say something like, hey, yeah, this is an acceptable number, or x is inside the acceptable range. And then we might also say, in this case, we would maybe just make sense to copy and paste it. X is outside the acceptable range. If it's not inside, then it has to be outside. So let's see, 25. This should be inside. This is easy. And it is. But we can also test the boundary cases. We don't need to test every number between 20 and 40. If the boundaries, 20 and 40, are what we think, this should be inside. If these are true, then it's likely that everything else is working fine too. So what about 19? 19 should be outside. 40 is inside. And 41 is outside. Now, interestingly, if we go back to 40 for a moment, and we take away this, now it's asking, is x less than 40? And no, x is not less than 40. So this is going to be outside the acceptable range. So you have to pay attention to the greater than and less than signs, and whether it means greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. You have to really pay attention. Are you seeing both of these or just one of these? Otherwise, your boundary may not be quite where you think it is. This is an example of how to compare the value of x to see if it's inside of a range. But now let's take this one step further. What if we want to say, in plain English, if x is if x is less than 20, or x is greater than 40, then we might want to say, then x is outside of the acceptable range. Now you think, well, we just did that up there, but this time we're going to write it specifically with an if statement. Here we're triggering this with else. So how could we write this right here with an if statement? Before, we're looking for is a number inside the range. But now we're going to say, is the number outside the range? So the way that we do this is to say if x is less than 20 or x is greater than 40, we're going to say it's outside the range. Let's just comment this out for a moment so we don't execute this code. And let's run this. Is 25? I guess we can go ahead and make this work as well. We'll just copy this up here and paste it there. This is going to be inside the range. What about 41? "41 is outside." And that's kind of what we expect. And we can play around with this a little more. We can change this. Maybe it might be easier just to comment this out for a moment and move it down here. Is x less than 20? Is 20 less than 20? The answer is no. So this is inside of the range. I hope you can see here we've essentially done the same thing, but with slightly different constructs. We've specifically tested up here, is x inside a range, and down here we're testing, is x outside of a range. And notice that we use or here and up here, because up here we must have both of these conditions must be true. We have to check both ends of the range, because we're looking inside the range, logically speaking. But down here, we're only checking really one side or the other. And you say, well, how come we don't use and here? Well, you tell me. You tell me a value that x could be where it is both less than 20 and greater than 40. Well, it's impossible. And if you think it is possible, then think about it until you realize or understand what I'm telling you. X can't be two numbers at the same time, and if we change it to this is impossible. In fact, yeah, it's saying we can simplify it. It's also an impossible combination as well. Once you simplified it, IntelliJ may very well tell you that. I imagine it would, or sorry, not IntelliJ, PyCharm. Because X can't be less than 20 and greater than 40. It can be one but not the other. So it makes no sense to use and here. You have to use or. Because here we're not validating whether the number is inside of a range directly, like we were up here. We're really checking just one side or the other to see if it's outside the range. And then our else statement is what catches everything in between.